Hi, I'm Cassie Bingham. I'm one of the program directors from the Center for Social Impact here at UVU, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to use systems thinking and equity-centered design thinking to create equity plans that work. So right now in society, we're in a moment of deep reflection when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity work. Our commitment to improvement and success really hinges on us being able to create opportunity and access to a variety of people of different backgrounds and identities. However, sometimes it feels like we are talking a lot more than we're doing. You might have experienced this on a large scale as you watch society continue to grapple with and debate the same topics that are often spurred by horrific events. As well, on a personal level, you might experience this as you continue to have uncomfortable conversations via social media or in your household or in your workplace, but maybe still feel overwhelmed about how to transition those into actionable change. Oftentimes, when we approach diversity, inclusion, and equity work, we do so in ways that are surface level at best, and at worst in ways that are tokenizing and can be really damaging to building trust and building communities. At the Center for Social Impact, we've implemented a few different frameworks to help guide us in more deeply engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. These include systems thinking and equity-centered design thinking. Systems thinking is a mentality that helps us to move beyond seeing the world as a series of isolated events and instead starting to notice patterns and outcomes that are produced by systems. As we notice that some of these patterns and outcomes are less than ideal, using systems thinking, we can better analyze systems to create better outcomes, even when this means challenging or even rejecting the status quo. Equity-centered design thinking is a problem-solving framework that asks us to call upon deep humility and empathy to listen to those who are most directly impacted by problems, and then co-collaborate with them to solve problems, drawing upon their lived experience. The Center for Social Impact has seen great success in our current equity plan by drawing from systems thinking and equity-centered design thinking. So I want to take you through 3 steps that the Center for Social Impact has utilized to be able to have this success. So step number 1, as a workspace, frame your goals around inclusion and equity versus merely diversity and equality. Diversity can be a great goal, however, it's limited in its impact. The mere presence of diversity is not very meaningful if diverse identities and diverse perspectives are not allowed to share in decision-making and culture shaping within a workspace. Inclusion is the embedding of, integrating of, and embracing of diversity. It requires deep listening, and it requires sharing influence and power. Inclusion is the antidote of tokenism. Similarly, equality is a great goal but can be limited in its scope. It often fails to take into account systemic inequities. Goals of equity allow us to examine systems and allow us to examine the patterns and outcomes of systems and historical context. So for example, if as a workspace your opportunities are equal, they might provide opportunity to a set of students equally. For example, an opportunity might require access to internet in the home of a student. An equitable opportunity might expand access and instead provide accommodation for students to engage with that opportunity whether they do or do not have internet access at home. And that's just one example. So in your workspace, discuss the differences between diversity and inclusion and the differences between equality and equity, and ask yourselves how you can better cultivate an atmosphere that accounts for those distinctions. Step number 2, take inventory of where your workspace currently stands in regards to equity and inclusion. Be really fearless and critical with this inventory and ask where there might be unintentional yet unnecessary barriers that are creating exclusion or failing to take into account a variety of backgrounds with a variety of needs that are often the result of inequitable systems. For example, ask yourselves, do your hiring or acceptance standards require that students have access to large professional networks? Or are some of your opportunities, the formats or the timing of the opportunities, exclusive to students that might not have access to transportation or who might have to work full-time jobs? Additionally, take personal inventory within your workspace on a team member basis individually. What tasks and processes do each team member have control over, and how can they better create inclusivity and equity with the influence that they have? An example from the Center for Social Impact is that our student graphic designer has influence over purchasing different type fonts and artwork from artists. She realized that she was sourcing a lot of these artworks and fonts from solely artists who are white. She was able to recognize that there's been a historical underinvestment in artists of color and backtrack a little bit and start to intentionally invest and purchase from artists of color. Number 3, finally, based on reframing your goals away from merely diversity and equality, and instead reframing to inclusion and equity, and also based on your fearless inventory of your workspace and of your various tasks and influence on a team member basis, come together as a team and create a strategic and actionable equity plan. This may be multi-layered, it might be multi-phased, because structural change versus surface level change can sometimes take a little bit of time. However, now your goals should be focused on actionable change. You should be able to identify metrics and indicators by which to measure your progress towards inclusion and equity, so that you and your team can go back periodically, check in on your goals, on your metrics and indicators, and also transparently report on where you are at in terms of those goals. I know that this 3-step process works because at the Center for Social Impact, I've seen it work over the past year. We took into account the frameworks of systems thinking, equity-centered design thinking, and discussed the differences between diversity and inclusion, equality and equity. And we were able to take a really transparent and thorough inventory of our workspace and ask ourselves where there were gatekeeping practices or barriers that were excluding students unnecessarily. Some of these included changing some of our hiring and acceptance standards that were asking for unnecessarily advanced application materials from students who might not yet have had an opportunity to build up their professional networks. It also included expanding our student opportunities that were compensated. We realized that many students can't afford to take student leadership opportunities that aren't compensated. So we decided to push for sponsorship and also allocate some of our budget towards compensating more students. In the last year alone, we've seen our Impact Associates team increase in diversity by tenfold. We had over 75% of our Impact Associates students of color. Also, our incoming Impact Fellow team is 50% students of color. We can be confident because at the Center for Social Impact, we focused on structural changes to increase our diversity and inclusion, that these student leaders are deserving of their positions and they're qualified. Versus had we just done surface level changes, we might have been at risk of tokenizing. The Center for Social Impact includes its equity plan on its website at uvu.edu/social impact. We also are more than willing to talk with, discuss, or answer questions concerning how we view inclusion and equity in our current equity plan with anyone at UVU. We hope to be part of more conversations about how to make actionable and successful equity plans on campus. Thank you.